Welcome to Copytraders Club, where you can learn how to make more money copy trading. I'm Gavin Macaulay, my name and username on eToro. You can continue the conversation on Discord and Facebook. If you like this podcast and want to see it continue, you can do your part by recommending it to one person or group of people this week. Today, we chat with a PI all the way from Italy via Australia. We discuss the world of podcasts, humility versus cockiness, cards, synchronicity, and the problems with Australian English. Here we go. Episode 25 of Copytraders Club. 25 is the number I had in mind before I began. I will do 25, I said, and see where we are. So there's quite a bit of introspection going on about the future. But for the immediate future, let us straighten our ties and stand at the top of the entrance stairs to greet today's guest. It's Davide Marcotti, aka Dafne17, arriving at the Copytraders Clubhouse. He approaches. Davide, ciao. Benvenuto nel club dei Copytrader.
That was actually a good one.
Very kind. Well, it's great to have you, Davide, here at Copytraders Club. I know you've listened to the show, so you'll know that we need to answer a series of quickfire questions in order to get into the VIP lounge. Pronto?
Let's do it. Pronto.
Username on eToro.
Dafne17.
Date you joined eToro.
September 2017.
Year of birth.
1990.
Place of residence.
Sydney, Australia.
Profession.
Management consulting.
Briefly state what you aim to achieve on eToro.
I want to provide the best return to risk ratio and retire within 10 years.
Name one of your investing heroes.
No doubt, Raoul Pal.
Name one of your favorite investing books.
I was going to go with The Price of Tomorrow by Jeff Booth, but someone has already said that. So I'm just going to give you my favorite podcast instead, after the Copytraders Club, obviously. And that's the Investors Podcast, TIP by Preston Pish.
That completes the formalities. Let's proceed into our VIP section here at the Clubhouse, the splendid Copytraders Lounge. Davide Marcotti, aka Dafne17, are you ready for this magical transition?
Pronto.
Here we are now, Davide, in the splendid Copytraders Lounge. I was planning to start by congratulating Italy and chanting "Chi non salta un inglese, eh?" But it seems you don't care about football.
Yeah, I'm not the most typical Italian that you'll ever come across. Let's just put it this way. I don't like football, coffee, wine. Yeah.
And you didn't even watch the game, I believe?
I didn't watch a single minute of the game. I didn't even know the end results up until earlier today. I found out today that Italy won 2-1. Obviously, I knew they won, but I didn't know the exact score.
Well, they won on penalties in the end.
Oh, did they? Okay.
Yeah. Well, a few of my English friends don't seem to care too much about football suddenly as well. And as you say, other Italian stereotypes don't apply to you, like wine and coffee. Have you become such an Aussie that you prefer sitting in your board shorts watching the AFL, sipping on a stubby of VB?
It's actually quite funny that you know about VB, I'm not going to lie. No, I wasn't a pure Italian breed before coming over to Australia. So I've ever been, an outcast, if you will, in terms of the stereotype. Yeah, I like beer, but I prefer German beer to the lager beer that they have here in Australia.
Okay, so you've just become an elite popular investor. Congratulations. Moving into where the big bucks are. So to celebrate, you bought a new apartment. I saw from your latest video. It appears to be in the downtown area of Sydney, so no longer in Bondi. Is that right?
That is correct, yes. You're very familiar with Sydney and Australia, you see.
I'm familiar with your videos, and I know you were in Bondi previously, and I saw the backdrop in your most recent video, and it's kind of skyscrapery or tall buildings.
Yeah, that's right. So I was living in Bondi, which is, for those listening that are not extremely familiar with Sydney as much as you are, Bondi is near to, is basically at the beach, whereas now I moved into the city centre, which is what we call CBD, Corporate Business District, because I missed it. And I used to live here before, and yes, I do live in a central area. It's not with eToro's money, though. That's for certain.
So no more walks along the beach listening to podcasts?
No more walks along the beach, but a lot of long walks just around the city. Just today, I went for a 2-hour walk just before talking to you, Gavin.
Okay, so you're Italian and living in Australia. Both cultures with, generally speaking, old school traditional notions of masculinity and what it means to be a man. So why do you call yourself Daphne?
That is a very interesting question, and that's a question that I get a lot. So it is quite dated. So I was hanging out with this very good friend of mine. This was probably 10 years ago, right? And he just used to call me Davide, which is how you pronounce my name. And then he started calling me Dave. And, all of these different variations of the name. And then one day he just came up with Daphne. I was like, what's that? And he was like, oh, Daphne. I was like, kind of like that. And then I added my favorite number, which is 17. And there you have it.
Okay, well, these usernames are fascinating. There's a different story behind every one. I was talking to a guy recently who's just signed up to eToro, potentially to become a PI at some stage in the future. And my advice to him was just use your own name, because a lot of people seem to regret their username and it's very hard to change.
It's impossible to change. If I could change it, I would probably consider it. I would call myself something along the lines of dividends investing or green bull. They seem to be quite popular on eToro for one reason or the other.
Okay, so let's talk about how I came across you. I watched one of your YouTube videos a long time ago in terms of how long I've been interested in eToro. Top popular investor on eToro reveals all his sources, which I thought, oh great, a top popular investor revealing all his sources. I'm going to learn a lot from this, and I did. In that video, as with other places, you keep repeating the need to be humble and the need for humility, but sometimes with a twinkle in your eye. You seem to recognize that you might not always come across as particularly humble. Is that right?
I think that's been the pattern, a very, very consistent pattern in my life. So sometimes I come across as cocky, but that's definitely not what I want to do. And then just very recently, I think just a few years ago, I realized that there is so much to learn. And the more you learn, the more you know that there is to learn. And I started looking at other people. I started talking to other people, and I realized that connections are more important, and networking is more important than product knowledge. Right? And that applies to investing, it applies to work, it applies to everything in life. And by connecting with other people, I realized that learning never ends. And you need to be humble in order to get the most out of everyone that you ever come across.
I see somewhere in your videos that one of your interests is magic. Tell us about when you got into magic and what does that do for you?
That is a very good question. And yes, so I got into Magic, which is a strategy card game. Yeah, when I was very young, I'm talking about when I was probably 12 or 13 years old. My cousin used to play, and one day introduced me and my brother to this game. And ever since, we've been hooked up. And so I started playing at that age, around 12, 13, 14. And then I wasn't playing competitively. But then as time passed, my strategy also evolved and my familiarity with the game. And then I managed to get my hands on all of the cards that I needed to in order to be competitive at tournaments. And then it just, I don't know, then life happened and I became very good at it, or at least I believe so, or at least the results are telling that story. And yeah, so I started playing quite competitively. And then I got invited to the World Championship a couple of times, which is invite only. I traveled the world. I went to the United States. I went to Europe, Australia, and yeah, to play competitively. So that was quite an interesting process and part of my life, which is still ongoing actually.
And it's strategic in the same way as poker, or?
Yeah, so you raised a very good point there, Gavin. Magic and poker share pretty much the same skill set. You're looking at odds. In poker, they're called pot odds. In Magic, they're just called odds. So a lot of math and a lot of reading what your opponent has got. So there's the skill set is pretty much the same, and that's why a lot of Magic players, professional Magic players, then end up playing poker because it's more rewarding in terms of coin money.
So in that video, you also talked a lot about how you don't typically read investing books. You listen to a lot of podcasts and watch a lot of YouTube. The We Study Billionaires podcast is one of your favorites, with Preston Pish and Stig Brodersen. Now, he's a guy that he gives strength to every podcaster with an accent that it's possible to make it, because his accent is absolutely crazy, isn't it? Where's he from?
So he's from North Europe, and I can tell you a story about that if you want. This is how deep I am into that podcast. So Preston Pish is the founder of TIP, the Investors Podcast, and then We Study Billionaires, which is a spin-off of this podcast. And Preston Pish began his career in investing probably a decade ago. And then as he got into investing, he was on a train, right? And he was going home and it was going from one city to another one, and he was just reviewing his paper, and he wanted to get his ideas out on the web, right? And he started talking to the guy that was next to him, that was sitting next to him on the train, and the guy said, "You should probably start a podcast." And he was like, "Oh, should I start a podcast?" I was like, "Yeah, podcasts. Podcasting is a good thing." And that was years and years ago. Not like nowadays. They're quite popular, but we're talking about probably 5 to 6 years ago, right? So it wasn't as big as it is now. And so he decided to start a podcast. And then he reached out to one of his contacts, which is this Stig, who's from North Europe, right? And Stig was like, "Yes, I would like to join your podcast, but as you can tell, I have an accent." Preston was like, his response was like, "No, make your weakness, so to speak, your point of strength, because I believe that your accent will bring a lot of value to my podcast, because we're going to reach a wider audience than just the American audience. We're going to reach other countries that do not speak English as the first language." So he basically transformed the point of weakness into a point of strength for the podcast.
You say he's from Northern Europe. It's probably Norway or somewhere like that.
Yeah, I think it's Norway from memory.
But he does sound a bit Arnold Schwarzenegger as well, kind of. That kind of twisted, almost painful to get English out.
Yeah, but his English is obviously perfect. He's actually a professor at university back there in Europe. But yeah, he's a good guy, very intelligent.
Sure. Fascinating. One of the questions I was going to ask you is, when do you listen to podcasts? But I saw a post that you just did where you list all the times when you listen to podcasts.
Yes.
On my way to work, while working in the morning, while cooking lunch, while eating lunch, while working in the afternoon, while exercising in the evening, while cooking dinner, while eating dinner, while taking a walk after dinner, while working in the evening, while taking a bath, while getting ready to sleep, and then while sleeping, okay, maybe not this time. So I don't know what that leaves in the day.
Well, you got to understand, as I said at the start, I work for a very large consulting firm in financial services. And I also invest, right? And I've been investing for a long time. But you got to understand that that's all I do. I don't do anything else. I don't have a partner. I don't spend too much time on Netflix, Instagram, or any of these things. So basically, my day just comes down to work and then podcast or YouTube videos about investing or reading articles. Yeah, that's it.
Well, I'm glad to hear you're such a big fan of podcasts, because I aim to become the David Rubenstein of eToro.
Okay, there you go. You actually cited one of my sources. Absolutely. He's a genius.
Okay, let's have a question from the art of people. Can you give me a number between 1 and 10?
Let's go with 7.
If you weren't doing what you're doing today, what would you be doing and why?
Probably politics or something that has to do with people. I like talking to people, and kind of have my way understanding humans' emotions as well. So yeah, I think that's one of my point of strengths.
Let's move on to your bio now, Davide. Would you like to read your bio for the listener?
Absolutely. I work with the largest financial institutions in the world, and I've been investing for 13 years since I was 18. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I run the type of portfolio that you can check once a year, knowing that your money is being put to work and that you will never be debited any fees. I absolutely love what I do and will never quit.
So you say, I work with the largest financial institutions in the world and trade as a popular investor on eToro full-time. I found that a little bit confusing, but you've already clarified that those are the only two things you do. So you're not full-time on eToro, but all your time is taken up by those two things, right?
That's right. So basically, if you calculate the amount of time that I spend on both, you probably make up 2 or 3 or 4 jobs.
You think you spend as much time on eToro and investing and all the background work as somebody who's a full-time eToro person?
Most likely, yes, if not more.
Now, further down on your bio, it says that you are Platinum Plus, which means you've got skin in the game, which means you don't have to add funds. Now, that's quite a hot topic at the moment. The most recent episode was a 3-person panel with Jay Nemesis, Robert Merck, and Felix Falix. One of the subjects we discussed was the adding of funds. And Jay and Robert were saying that they wear it as a badge of pride that they don't have to add funds because that's so good for copiers. But it shouldn't be the case. There should be some sort of facility for PIs to back themselves and add as much money as they want to their own fund. You know what I mean? That was the idea. Have another account. PIs should be allowed to have another account that copies themselves, that doesn't get treated as assets under management, but doesn't affect copiers in the way that it does when money's added to the principal account, you know?
I think it makes total sense.
So I'm sure that's a change eToro are going to make happen, because they're shooting themselves in the foot by telling loads of important people you can't add any money into the system, which is precisely what they want. They want money in the system, right?
Yeah, of course they do. But you can still add money. Maybe if you add money at the beginning of the month, it shouldn't impact your stats, but it's bad for copiers. So yeah, I don't know why they're not allowing a second account to copy yourself with.
I think it'll happen.
I think so. Yeah, I think it would definitely happen.
That's something you mentioned in your recent YouTube video, There's a series of points you want to get across to copiers so that they understand what they're getting when they invest in you. Those points are no daily fees, no deposits, good communication with copy traders, beat the S&P 500 or don't copy you, and provide the best risk to return ratio.
So let me just tackle them one by one. No fees, no daily fees. And you can generate daily fees, not just by using leverage, but also by investing in certain assets on eToro. So if you look up gold, for example, there's two assets that you can invest in. One is the CFD on gold, and you pay daily fees on that one, even if you don't use leverage. But a smarter way, in my opinion, would just be to buy the ETF on gold, which basically replicates the exact same performance as the CFD. And by buying the ETF, you don't pay daily fees. And obviously the second part is leverage. If you use leverage, then you obviously pay daily fees because it just makes sense. That's how leverage works.
And can I just stop you there? I also saw that you mentioned that you started as a copy trader on eToro, and you were very disappointed that the guy you were copying didn't pay due attention to those two matters. And that's what put you off.
Yeah, so I don't know if they didn't pay attention to it or if they just did it because they wanted to increase their returns or whatever. The whole thing about copy trading in my mind is that you can invest in a person, right, which is the same thing as investing in a fund, in a managed fund, right? And then you can leave your money with this person for months or years without even checking it, right? If you need to check it every day, every week, every month, and check whether the popular investor in question has deposited money or whether you're being debited fees, then it defeats the purpose. So I started in 2017 as a copy trader because I just moved to Australia and had money into other accounts, and I just came across eToro and I was thinking, that's quite cool. Maybe I don't need to manage another account. Maybe I just want to try this thing. And then I was getting debited all of these fees, and I was like, this is not really great. I don't want to do this anymore. So I just stopped copy trading after a while.
So you're very clear that unless you're going to beat the S&P 500, people shouldn't copy you.
Yeah, that's right. So this point goes with the other point, which is to provide the best risk to return ratio. So obviously, when you look at the S&P 500, I think we're looking at 18% year to date, with the Nasdaq going 17% year to date or something along those lines. If I wasn't able to yield better returns than these two indices, then I don't see a reason why would anyone copy my portfolio or any PI's portfolio. There is actually no reason to do that, right? So just buy the QQQ, which is the Nasdaq, or just buy the SPY, which is the S&P 500. For the past 3 years, obviously starting in 2019, 2018 was obviously a bloodbath for crypto, but I only had a few $100 in it. Starting from 2019, I've been consistently beating both indices, and I don't plan on stopping because I do way too much research not to be able to do that, to be completely honest with you. But that's one of the key pointers that I want to get across, right? There is no sense in copying a PI if they're underperforming the S&P 500 or a Nasdaq, which is what I really look at.
Well, unless the other point comes into play, risk to return ratio. Unless you're very low risk, less risk than owning an index.
I mean, how risky is it to own an index? If you look at the past 10 years, the S&P 500 has gone up year on year with an average of 10% a year, probably a little bit higher, depends on the year. Well, what are we talking about here, Gavin?
Okay, that most recent video that we're talking about is also subtitled. Is that for the hearing impaired or for non-native English speakers?
Yeah, so I guess it's for the latter a little bit. It's also because I tend to speak quite fast from time to time, and my accent is as you can tell. It's not really Italian, but it's not Australian either. It's like a mix. And this is due to the fact that I watch way too many TV series, or I used to, in American English, and then transferred over to Australia. And then in Australia, I worked with every sort of nationality, from Australians to Brits to Americans to Indians to honestly everything, all around the world. Just on the project I'm on now, I work with people from 5 countries, and they all have different accents and everything. So obviously mine gets compromised, so to speak. And also I added subtitles because my audience on eToro is international, obviously, and they do not all speak English, obviously, as first language. So I just thought of adding some value if I would just put the subtitles up there. And I got good feedback from my community saying that they liked it. So yeah, I think it was a decent move.
I've been thinking about that myself, because I suppose the audience for this podcast is also international. And, I interact with quite a few of the listeners who are from all over the place. And sometimes they say, my English isn't that great. I don't understand everything that's being said. It is possible to create transcripts as a paid service and add those so they're accessible to people so they can read and listen at the same time. Like everything in podcasting, it becomes more expensive. Every additional thing you want to do costs more and more money. So maybe one day I'll do that.
I think it's a great idea, Gavin.
Well, this is a not-for-profit hobby at the moment. So that would have to change, I think, if I was to do all the things that I want to do with it in the future. But that's a conversation for another time. Let's move on. Your risk score, average of 5 over the last 7 days. But we don't deal in averages here in Copytraders Club. It's always max risk. And your max risk is kind of 5 or 6 mostly. You did go into 7 recently. And obviously you were copy blocked, weren't you, because of that?
Yeah.
Which caused a drop off in your number of copiers. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so that was quite unfortunate, if I have to be completely honest with you, Gavin. I think that was towards the tail end of February. And that's because just when I think Bitcoin was trading at around, I don't know, I'm going from memory here, 40,000, 50,000, something on those lines. And then it crashed quite rapidly. And I saw an opportunity there. So I bought miners, Riot and Mara. And I bought quite a sizable position. It was probably a little bit below 10% of my portfolio in these 2 miners. And that obviously pushed the risk score up from 5 that it was at the time to 7. And then I didn't realize that. I was like, yeah, it's going to go to 6. Yeah. So I booked a profit on those positions, actually. But then I closed them, luckily enough, actually, because then they went down. I closed them in March, early March. But unfortunately, the trades went across 2 months, right? So unfortunately, the risk score peaked at 7 in February because I bought towards the end of February. And then I sold at the beginning of March. So even though I held the stocks for like a week, the risk score already peaked to 7 for 2 months. So that was quite unfortunate because then I got copy blocked, and it was a painful process because I got emails and notifications on LinkedIn, Facebook, everywhere, on eToro, obviously asking me when I would become available to be copied again. And I didn't know. I was just hoping that it would be quick. But yeah, it's okay. It's never going to happen again.
And how long did it take before it was lifted?
Yeah, 2 full months. Yeah.
2 full months before the block was lifted?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah.
And did you have any idea that this move was going to affect your risk score to that extent? You have no way of gauging that?
No, so that's one of the improvements that I've been suggesting to my account manager, who is amazing, by the way. I told him the coolest thing that eToro could do for PIs would be to add this sort of risk score calculator where you just calculate in advance what your risk score would be based on new positions that you would open, so that you know whether you're going to hit 7 or not. But it's okay. Look, now we've got a risk score of 5. It's never going to get to 7 again.
That was also a suggestion that Felix Falix mentioned the other night. Before you make a trade, you can check, how will this affect my risk score?
Felix knows what he's talking about, that's for certain.
So copiers, as of the time of recording, 419. Assets under management between 300k and 1 million. Your copiers graph is a very steep ascent. And then there's a sort of a shallow V shape, and we're coming up, building back up from the base of the V. Is the base of the V when the copy block was lifted?
That's right.
And then the decline prior to that was, the summit was when the copy block was instituted.
Yeah.
You were on a very steep ascent, and then suddenly the rug was pulled out from under your feet.
Rightly so. I can't blame them.
Trades per week and average holding time. Trades per week, 5.42. Average holding time, 4.5 months. Does that accurately reflect your style of investing, those two stats?
Look, we both know that those stats can be easily tweaked, and they're not as meaningful as you might think, right? But yeah, I think it does. Look, I'm a long-term investor, mainly. So when I invest in an asset, it's because I truly believe in the asset and because I've done a ton of research, but like a lot. And I'm willing to buy as the price goes lower because that's my investing philosophy. If you're getting into an asset and you're disappointed if it goes down in the near future, then it means that you got into the wrong asset. You should be quite happy if the asset goes down because if you are dollar cost averaging in, obviously you get to buy at lower prices knowing that in 10 years time it will double or triple in value. So it's a win-win for you.
So do you do something a bit like Jay Nemesis does, which is you're a long-term investor, but you toggle your positions quite a bit?
I do, yeah.
Rather than sitting on them for months on end?
I take profits along the way, obviously. And I also invest when there are downturns into the stock. So it's not really a buy and forget. It's more actively managed, if you will, checking stocks day on day, knowing that they have a clear trajectory ahead. So maybe I'm trimming 1% of the position, taking profits, and then reinvesting if there is a downturn into the asset.
Would that be your advice to any would-be PI who is at heart a long-term investor? That's a good policy because you're investing for the long term, but you're also kind of playing the eToro game, and it looks like you're active, you're on the ball, you're doing things, and copiers seem to like active looking investors. Think there's any truth in that?
There is truth to that. So unfortunately, as I was saying at the start, those two metrics do not fully represent someone's style, right? For example, if I wanted to invest $1,000 into a stock, I could open 20 trades for $50 each, or I could open one for $1,000. If I open 20, then that number will show 20 trades a week. If I opened one, that number will show one. So it's not weighted based on the volume, based on the size of the trade, based on your portfolio. Now, I still think that it's useful to some extent, but it's so that stats should be taken with a pinch of salt.
Hope you're enjoying today's show. I'm sure you've subscribed already. If you are a successful copy trader, happy to share what you've learned, there's no need to have a public profile. Get in touch. The bigger the club, the better for you. So tell people on eToro about this show. ask your PIs to come on. That way you will get to know them better. We build this club together. Turning now to your portfolio. Let's have a little look at that. You've got 25 positions. In terms of allocation, it's stocks 64%, crypto 22%, ETFs 14%. Numbers all rounded up. Running my eye down your portfolio, down the value column. Bitcoin is your biggest position at 14.5%. PayPal 11%, Nvidia 9%, Fiverr 6%, TAN, the solar ETF 6%. So the reason I stress that I was looking down the value column is because the invested column and the value column are not exactly the same. Let's talk about that desynchronization issue. Bitcoin is your largest position, right? So it's quite out of sync. Your value percentage is over twice the invested amount.
Yeah, so Bitcoin has done very well over the past couple of years. So obviously, my initial investment has gone up multiple folds, and I've also been taking profits along the way. So I remember selling at 57. I remember selling 55 and 40. I sold at pretty much every level. And even before getting into the PI program, I was 80% in Bitcoin or something on those lines because I believed in it that much. We're talking about April 2020, something on those lines. And then I had to lower my risk score, so I started selling all of my cryptos basically. And I was just left with a tiny bit, which is what you're seeing now. I plan on just probably selling some of my positions as Bitcoin recovers. I'm not going to be selling now because I would be doing a disservice to my copiers, because I would be closing a position in the red probably for them. So I'm just going to wait it out because I truly believe that Bitcoin is going to be massive in the second half of this year and next year as well.
It's interesting because when I watch your recent video and I listen to you talking, you're very in tune with how to be the best PI for your copiers and being copier friendly. And you make all the right noises as far as I can see. But the one issue that maybe is out of sync with that is the fact that there's a little bit out of sync, you know?
Yeah.
If your priorities in terms of position size are listed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, your copiers are 2, 5, 3, 1, 4. So in an ideal world, I imagine you would address that. I think what you're saying is the reason you're not doing that is just because Bitcoin's at a low ebb at the moment and you don't want to sacrifice the position purely to address that issue because you think Bitcoin has a long way to run, right?
Yeah, so I don't want to close positions in the red because obviously for me, it wouldn't be in the red. Obviously, I've made quite some profits on Bitcoin, so I'm still up probably 100% or 200%. But I don't want to do a disservice to my copiers, as I was saying, and closing down the position in negative territory. So I'm just going to wait out until it recovers a fair bit, and then I'm going to be rebalancing my portfolio to make sure that it's perfectly aligned with my copiers.
Okay, great, because there are slight differences in other positions, Nvidia and TAN and Ethereum.
Yeah, Ethereum is definitely probably has got a difference there. Yeah, but that's because its crypto's gone up so much.
I'm a newcomer to crypto. I didn't consider buying it until this recent drop, and now I've convinced myself that this is the last great opportunity to buy cryptos before mass adoption and all the rest of it. So I've drunk the Kool-Aid. I'm still only buying small amounts, to be fair, because my eToro account overall is still quite small in number terms. it sounds to me that without giving financial advice, you would say this is a good buying opportunity for cryptos generally.
Yeah, without giving financial advice, obviously, yes, I do believe that it's a great opportunity. I think Bitcoin is obviously king. There is limited supply. Everything else is secondary to Bitcoin. I like Ethereum for smart contracts, DeFi, and NFTs. I like the ETH 2.0. I like what the future holds for Ethereum. And then I can speak to probably all of the top 100 coins, to be completely honest with you. I think some of them has great potential. And yeah, look, if you're a new investor and everything, I would suggest, obviously not giving financial advice, but what I would personally do is just to go straight to Bitcoin and Ethereum, because those two are the ones that you can definitely hold for years to come, knowing that they will still be there in 10 or 20 years. The same can be said about some other altcoins.
Bitcoin and Ethereum will be my two biggest positions for sure, but then I'll have a little play with a few others. Okay, let's move it along. You take social investing to a whole new level on the front end. Let me try and describe what I understand to be your method. You're not a reader of investing books necessarily. You're not the kind of solo practitioner who ignores the media and relies only on his own numbers. Instead, you use lots of different influences: YouTube, podcasts, Wall Street bets, a variety of sources of information to find ideas, and you discuss specific ideas with other investors you know, either personally or virtually. Gather a range of opinions, cross-reference your calculations with those of others before deciding if you're going to invest. Is that an accurate description?
I'm actually amazed that you could put it so well. You could put it down so well. It's amazing. Yes, that's exactly what I do.
So who are the people that you have in your network that you discuss ideas with?
Yeah, so starting from colleagues, so as I was saying, I work for a very reputable consulting firm in financial services, and we work for the major financial institutions in the world. And obviously, my colleagues are fairly financially savvy, if you will, and most of them invest, and obviously they know me because of my eToro and Davis and all of that jazz. So it is not rare that we end up talking about stocks, crypto, and inflation, macroeconomics, which is what I'm passionate about. So obviously, colleagues within my circle of friends, but also other investors that are not directly related to with work. I'm talking about high net worth individuals in the city of Sydney that I sometimes talk to and share ideas with, and I got some great insights from them. And then, as you were saying, I cross-reference all of this with multiple sources to come to an investing decision.
Let's get back to humility. Tell me about a time when you were genuinely humbled. You're made to feel you didn't have a clue what you were doing.
That's a very good question. I hope my colleagues are not listening to this. So when I first arrived to Australia in July, August 2017, I was already working for this company in Italy, right? It's quite public, honestly. You can just Google me. It's Accenture, it's called. 500,000 employee worldwide. And so I was already working for Accenture in Italy for 2.5 years. And then I moved to Australia, same company, same industry, which is financial services. And obviously, when I arrived here, I didn't know all of the business lingo, if you will. So for some reason, Australians like to use abbreviations a little bit too much sometimes. And for me, it was just fairly hard to keep up at first. So I think my first couple of days on the project, I was like, what the hell is going on here? So that's pretty much how I felt. It definitely wasn't easy. I knew that it was not going to be easy. But with time, I was thinking that I would be able to overcome those obstacles. And I think I successfully did that.
Australian English does take a bit of getting used to, the conversations or the convos that you have there. You can't even say conversation. That's not a very long word.
Did I say combo before?
No, that's what the Aussies say. Instead of saying, they say, I had a convo this avo about the footy.
Oh yeah,
no?
yeah, because yeah, I was like, I probably said combo. So I was like, no, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And then just imagine being a consultant on this project, and you are supposed to facilitate a meeting with probably 15 people on the call, everyone talking over each other. So it was quite a mess, honestly. Different nationalities as well. So it was definitely not the ideal scenario to start off with in a new country.
Okay, so after talking about humility, let's get back to, let's talk a little bit about success. What would you consider to have been your best investment within the eToro ecosystem?
I'm looking at two investments here. Obviously, Bitcoin has played quite a significant part in my career on eToro and in my life in general, I would say. But also, I saw some stocks quite early. I'm talking about Fiverr. I was talking about Fiverr when it was trading at $25 in March 2020, April. As a matter of fact, I participated into a challenge on the Facebook group, and this challenge was name the best stock that is going to outperform this month, and I named Fiverr because I did a lot of research onto Fiverr, and I just believed that it was gonna explode. So yeah, that's definitely one of the good investments that I've made. And then I opened closed. That's a long time ago, and yeah, so on top of Bitcoin, obviously Ethereum, but that goes hand in hand with Bitcoin. Not much more to say there. And then Nvidia, because of the chip shortage, as well as the Ethereum miners and the chips that they're producing. So that's also quite interesting. Plus, I'm a huge gamer, and I think gaming is going to overtake traditional sports as we know them in the next 5 years. So,
would you still be listening to podcasts when you're playing games?
Oh, I listen to podcasts all day. Today, I listened to two great conversations. One was with Jack Mollers. Really, really encourage everyone to listen to that episode on TIP, the Investors Podcast. And there's a conversation between Preston Pish and Jack Mollers, who's the CEO of Strike. And it just brought Bitcoin to a whole country, El Salvador. So it was just talking to Preston about how he tackled it and what it means to bring financial freedom and financial inclusivity to millions and millions of people in El Salvador. And then the other one that I listened to was just today, just so much, honestly. Just today, I listened to the other one, which is just before our call. And it was a conversation with Anthony Pompliano and Peter Schiff. So the whole conversation around Bitcoin versus gold. Is Bitcoin gold 2.0? Is gold going to overtake Bitcoin or vice versa? So it's very, very interesting conversation. I actually found it very insightful, and because it's good to listen to the positive side of things, but also listen to the people that disagree with you, because that's where you get the most out of your conversations, right? And Ray Dalio talks to it quite a lot. Like, have meaningful disagreement and be frank with the people that you talk to.
Sure, and you have to invert the story to test the strength of your own conviction.
Absolutely.
If you don't do that, you might have a disastrous investment because you only see things from one side. Speaking of disastrous investments, tell us about your worst one.
Oh boy. Probably that was Ripple in 2017. Well, I bought it in December 2017, held it through 2018, lost 90% of its value. There you go, the stats in 2018. I held Ripple. That was a disaster.
Ouch.
Yeah, I bought it $2.
And what about in terms of a stock?
My worst investment in terms of stocks, it's probably and your audience is gonna go crazy here, but GME, so GameStop. I bought just a bunch of shares at a very unattractive price level outside of eToro. Obviously, can't do that with my public profile. It was just a little bit of gambling, and it wasn't for that much. But yeah, definitely not something that is within my strategy. It was just a little bit of gambling, and it's fine, as long as you can control it. And it was in a big position anyway.
Before we move on to talk about your copiers, Davide, it seems to me that there's a combination of events here. You've just been elevated to elite level. The copy block has been lifted. And now I saw that recent video where you're sort of laying out your manifesto. Feels to me like there's a sort of a new energy. Now that the copy block has been lifted, Davide is back in the game.
Yeah, absolutely. So Davide is back in the game, stronger than ever, I would say. Lots of lessons learned from being blocked, and I think that made total sense from eToro, to just put a temporary hold on my capacity to take on new copiers. And lots of lessons learned there, so definitely not going to happen again. And I'm very looking forward to close this year with a bang. I think it's going to be amazing.
Well, let's talk about who it also could be amazing for when I ask, who should copy you?
Who should copy me? I would say basically whoever is willing to take on slightly more risk than just investing in the S&P 500, knowing that the returns would be in line with the risk adjustment. So if you have a very low risk appetite, my suggestion is just to invest in S&P 500 and QQQ, NASDAQ, if you are a little bit more adventurous, if you will. But if you're willing to take on slightly more risk, then you should probably look at my portfolio and then dollar cost average invest monthly, and then retire in 10 years probably.
So I think you've answered the question, who shouldn't copy you? Someone who wants to keep their risk low.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you don't have any risk appetite, or if your risk appetite is low, then just buy the S&P 500. There is not much to do there. Invest in a SPY every month, $500 into a SPY or whatever you can afford every month, and there you go. With compounding returns, you're probably gonna be fine. But if you are willing to take on slightly more risk, then you should definitely look at my portfolio.
Is there a right way or a wrong way to copy you?
Look, I got asked this question today as well by my account manager. It was like, when is the best time to start investing in your portfolio or anyone's portfolio? And I said, the answer that 90% of the people that you ask this question to is probably that invest in red days, double down in red days and all of that jazz, right? Just invest when there is blood in the streets, right? But the data shows otherwise. The data shows that you're actually more profitable investing at all-time high if you're just waiting for a crash, right? If you're waiting for a crash, you might be missing the boat. So what I say is neither. Don't invest at all-time high and don't invest at the bottom. Dollar cost average in. If you're planning to invest $5,000 into my portfolio, split that into 5 tranches, 5 installments, if you will, and just invest $1,000 every week or month, whatever you want, so that you can dollar cost average your entry point into the portfolio. And there is not right or wrong. You're not investing. You're guaranteed that you're not investing at all-time low or all-time high. And that's the best way to approach any investment, in my mind. Not just investing in a PI, but also investing in a stock, asset, crypto, anything.
Okay, I'm glad to hear you saying all that jazz. That's something that comes up a lot in your videos. So I heard it live. That was exciting. What role should you as a PI play in a copier portfolio? And can you describe what that ideal portfolio with you in it would look like?
I humbly believe that I run one of the best portfolios when it comes to a little bit more risk than the S&P 500 or Nasdaq. So if I were a copier, I would just copy my portfolio with 100% of my funds, because obviously, I would never say I would not invest in my portfolio, right? It doesn't make sense. If I'm doing what I'm doing, it's because I truly believe in it. So if you're in the same boat, sorry to say, but I would invest 100% in my portfolio. I wouldn't diversify into other portfolios, because that would mean that I'm not diversifying myself, right? And then there's no right or wrong when it comes to diversification, right? So Warren Buffett once said, diversification is for those that don't have no idea what they're doing. And I don't know if I fully subscribe to that. Not quite sure. I have my own way to invest. There's merits to diversification. Ray Dalio talks to it. By Ray Dalio runs a very complex portfolio. And he also said in one of the interviews that if you don't have this huge position in terms of funds, it's actually quite hard to fully diversify and reach the optimal levels that he is reaching with his size of portfolio. So because some assets you need to invest a certain amount in order to gain exposure to. So it's actually not a very easy conversation to have when it comes to diversification. Like diversifying into Nasdaq and S&P, it's not diversifying. Diversifying cross country to some extent, because most countries actually follow what the US are doing. So that's not really a good argument to make. Diversifying into crypto, yes, that's fine-ish, but Bitcoin is also going down when the stock market goes down from time to time. I mean, it's quite correlated. It's not completely uncorrelated. So there is some sort of correlation there between Bitcoin and the market, and all of the altcoins follow Bitcoin. So there you go. Then you have another layer of correlation between Bitcoin and the altcoins. So if you look at the graph, if you compare Bitcoin and the S&P 500, you see that they both bottom in March 2020 when the market crashed. So you're not eliminating systemic risk. You're just achieving a different level of diversification, which is not really what the huge Ray Dalio kind of like funds can achieve. So yeah, so it's a very complex thing to talk about. Raoul Paul talks to it as well. He said that in order to generate generational wealth, you need to pick your niche, do a lot of research, and he's done it, for example, with Bitcoin, and then he went all into crypto, right? I would not suggest doing the same to most investors out there, because you really need to understand the ins and outs of it, right? But he's done his homework, and he went all in, right? He went all in Bitcoin, and I remember watching his videos, all of his interviews. I subscribed to his channel, to his podcast, Real Vision, all of that. And he said in one interview that he's irresponsibly long, right? He's even got T-shirts to say irresponsibly long. I almost got one, but then I was afraid of the double meaning there, so I wouldn't be comfortable wearing. I wouldn't be comfortable wearing that in public. But that's how you make generational wealth, right? Just focus on something and do it well. Do it well. Diversifying for the sake of diversification doesn't lead anywhere, right? Then I subscribe to what Warren Buffett says, which basically means that you have no idea what you're doing.
That's very interesting. Thank you for discussing diversification here, because normally that comes up earlier in the conversation and we didn't really get into it earlier. So do you have many copiers that copy only you?
Yeah, I got a fair bunch now. I don't really check all of their portfolios. But I remember the first ones that started copying me, because obviously, you never forget your first copier or your first 10 copiers. Then they come and go, obviously. But I was all over the moon when that happened, when I gained my first copiers, because it was some sort of validation that what I was doing was right. And I think I talked to my PI journey in one of my videos, but I was all over the moon when I got my first copies. And I remember checking their portfolios. I remember checking everything about what they were doing and about their thinking process, or at least the thoughts that went into their process that led them to copy my portfolio. So I was just trying to understand who was my target audience, and if I could find a pattern into what they were doing, right? So for example, maybe you see that 5 of your 7 copiers are investing in crypto. So you're like, oh, okay, so my portfolio is appealing to those that invest in crypto, but also seeking, again, some sort of diversification into stocks or NASDAQ or S&P 500, So I remember doing a lot of that. Now, obviously, a lot of copiers come and go. So I don't really check all of their portfolios. Sometimes I do, just for fun. But there are a lot of people, like my friends, almost all of them, they're 100% into my portfolio.
So apart from your friends, what's your preferred means of communication?
I post quite frequently on eToro because I just love interacting with my copiers, and they're beautiful, beautiful people, really. Mine is all organic growth. So it didn't come because I was put on the editor's choice or in some rankings, whatever they're called. That there is like long-term investors or, short-term investors, whatever mix. I don't know. I've never been on any of those, unfortunately. I'm not quite sure why myself, but it is what it is. Hopefully in the future, who knows? I'll just keep doing what I'm doing. And so it's all organic growth, and they're actually quite stable. And I think they're all, or most of them, are financially educated, or at least they know what they're doing because they understand the downturns and the bumps in the road. And I keep saying that in my post, and I stress that a lot, to say we know the destination, we just don't know how many bumps in the road we're going to have in our journey. So as I like to say, probably a little bit too much, this is a marathon and it's not a sprint, right? There's going to be bumps in the road, but all of my copies are very loyal. I think I'm not losing any of them. Maybe 1 or 2, 1 a day. It's amazing. And some of them reached out to me on LinkedIn and Facebook, and I accept them all, obviously, and I always reply to all of them. And they're amazing. One actually offered to host me if I ever go back to Italy. They were like, just come stay in mine. You and your partner, you can come stay in mine if you ever come to Italy and visit, this city in Italy. Just come and stay in mine. I was like, amazing. And then one day I talked about getting a new crypto frame to put up to the wall here, and a guy reached out to me on Facebook, and he was like, I actually know a supplier in China. I can get it done for you. I was like, yeah, I compensate you. Obviously, I don't want it for free, but yeah, let's see what your supplier's got. So, and then other people on LinkedIn, they message me and they're like, hey, why are you holding this stock? And then I explain it. I explain the thinking process around it. And to me, you remember when we talked about having or working pretty much the whole day? It's not really work, because once you love what you're doing, you don't have a job, you have a passion, right? And to me, that's how it feels. I'm never stressed. I actually sleep like a baby, even though I dedicate most of my time to consulting and investing. I just go to bed and I'm very relaxed, because I just like it. Having a conversation with you, it's not like it's quite fun, and then I'm going to be listening to another podcast, and then I'm going to go home and happy, wake up tomorrow, do it all over again. It's beautiful.
One question I always like to ask PIs is, if you were a copy trader, what would your approach be?
Yes, that's another question that I got this morning from my account manager. I think they're putting together some sort of like best practices to approach popular investors. So I will look at obviously performance, time that I've been on eToro. The last couple of years have been very bullish, Gavin. It was very hard to lose money in 2020. And if you return less than the NASDAQ, I think it was 45%, something insane for a year, then I don't know, I'll be a little bit reluctant to give you all my money. So I would look at performance. I would look at time on eToro. I would look at what they say in their posts. If their analysis is great, or if it just had a good year because they bought Tesla and they just held it for, for a year and it went up 300%. I would look at their persona outside of eToro. I mean, who am I investing my money in? Is this guy actually legit, or guy or girl, obviously? Or they just got lucky because it was very hard to lose money in 2020.
It sounds like you wouldn't be looking for too many PIs.
I mean, why would you, right? If you can just invest in the people that you want, why do you want to invest in 10 PIs when you found 2 or 3? It's not that you need to invest in 25 PIs, right? Actually, most PIs have a quite large portfolio, and it is quite expensive to copy a PI in terms of the money that you need to allocate to a PI. So my portfolio, for example, given the Platinum Plus, I think you need at least $1,000, right, to copy all of my open positions. I think I made the calculation. I think it's around 775 based on the size of the trade. I don't open positions for $50, for example. If I did, then probably 10% of my copiers would be able to fully copy my portfolio. So I don't do that because I know that would be that would be too bad for my copiers. So I don't want to do a disservice to them. But yeah, look, there's a lot of great PIs. I'm not saying that there aren't, but you don't need to invest in 25. Just pick and choose. That's what's great about it all. It's all public. It's all very transparent.
What other PI would you say you know the best on a personal level?
I wouldn't say that I'm a lone wolf, but I kind of am. No, I'm just joking. I'm the guy that is nobody really cares about, and then in a year time, I'll probably have more copies than Jane Nemesis. No, I'm joking.
Back to humility.
Yeah. No, I wouldn't say that. Possible, but we'll see. So I know I've been talking to Joe, as he was saying to you, obviously on his episode, which I listened to. It was a great one.
Joe Milazzo.
Yeah, stock up with Joe. So yeah, he's been very supportive of my career within eToro, and I also was very engaged with all of his posts and everything. I really liked what he was talking about, and we had offline conversations as well. Offline being over Facebook, not over eToro. I've never met him in person, but I think that's the only PI that I know that I've exchanged a few words with.
And there's not that many Australian PIs. When I search for them in eToro and I use the country filter for Australia, there's only a few people ever come up.
Yeah, and most of them invest in crypto. So yeah, I think I'm the only one that is pretty big on stocks and ETFs as opposed to crypto on the platform. And that's because I like stocks and I like crypto. So I want to live with both.
Final question, Davide. If you were in my shoes, what question would you like to have asked yourself that I didn't?
Wow, that's that's a very good question. One thing that I don't think we talked about quite extensively just yet is my professional background and how that plays out with my investing style, and if it's taking time off my investing endeavors or if it's adding value. And if I may, I think that it's actually adding tremendous value to what I'm doing. Not just because obviously I'm learning more and more about digital payments, lending, treasury, finance, and all of that stuff. Talking to the largest financial institutions in the world, as I was saying. So traditional finance is my bread and butter, right? But also because of the people that you are put in touch with, that you come across on your day to day. So most of my colleagues are extremely smart, as I was saying, right? They all invest. So you exchange ideas and you bounce ideas off your colleagues quite frequently. And I think that really helped me developed this good understanding, or a very humbly believe it's a decent understanding of the financial market. And it helps me in my decisioning process when I pick a new stock, or when I buy and when I sell. Because I just don't go off solely on my own opinions. As I was just saying, be humble and check with other people, check what they think, stress test your idea as much as you can, understand both sides of the argument, and then make an informed decision. And this is what I do with my colleagues. So having access to this pool of talents, bouncing ideas off with them, and really gaining an understanding of how traditional finance and banks and insurance companies work, I think that's adding tremendous value to my own persona and my own investing style. Yeah.
Well, Davide, it's been very interesting to catch up with you. And I really look forward to seeing how you get on in the future now that you're back in the game.
Absolutely. No, I love this conversation, and you know how much I love podcasts. So I was quite excited to just sit down and talk to you.
Good man, Davide. Thank you so much for being on here.
Thank you, Gavin. It's been amazing, and I can't wait to do this again next year.
That was Dafne17. Will be fun to see how he gets on in the future, and whether he can keep his humility in check if his copier numbers grow as he foresees. Interesting to hear his methods. Not all PIs are sitting alone in a room, number crunching until they come to an independent conclusion. That's all from me. You can continue the conversation on Discord and Facebook. If you like this podcast and want to see it continue, you can do your part by recommending it to one person or group of people this week. Until next time we meet at Copytraders Club, I wish you many happy returns. Obviously, anything you hear in this podcast is for entertainment only, not financial advice. Do your own research. This is just generic chit-chat. We don't know your individual circumstances, etc., and so forth.